We'll be starting in a moment. We're just having a few issues. Right, it's now 10 o'clock. So welcome to the meeting of the authority, full authority meeting. It's our annual meeting, and the first item on the agenda is the election of a chair. In accordance with our standing orders, I have received a proposal by Will Clark and seconded by Ms. Sabine Mosner for Mr. Jim Jackson to be elected as chair of this authority. As I have received no other nominations, then that stands, provided Jim is prepared to accept. So could I invite you, Jim, to take the chair if you accept?
Right. Good morning, and thank you very much for that, and thank you to Will and Sabina for nominating me. Although I might be cursing you by the end of the day, looking at the size of the room we have. Bear with me. Right. So the next part of the business, because clearly I was deputy chair, is we need a new deputy chair. So we have run through the similar process. We have one nominee, which is Peter Walter, proposed by Tiffany Hunt and seconded by Sally Lansbury. Peter, would you be happy to take the role? Wonderful. Thank you very much. So we're back with that. So right, so before we start our business, I don't think I can move on without saying a huge thank you to Tiffany. I am not going to move on without saying a huge thanks to Tiffany for all the work she's done. 4 years is a long time. I know she's kept us all well in order, but is also highly respected by all the stakeholders that the authority interfaces with. So thank you very much, Tiffany, for all your work. And I think Gavin has a small gift on behalf of everybody in the authority to thank Tiffany for her great efforts. And another round of applause, please, Bob.
Thank you very much, Jim, and also Peter, for stepping up to the chairman deputy chair, which has enabled me to sit down. But I will still go around for another year. Sabina, in our strategy, we will have completed our 8 years. At least we have another year to look for. So I'd just really like to thank everybody first. Very much appreciated.
Occasionally we will have to work our way down the line on the left, particularly, but
Friend. Right, and thank you, Tiffany, and very pleased you're still with us for another year, so I've got you to turn to from time to time as I need some advice. And also, you may not be aware that this is also Steve Reckless' final formal authority. A technical phrase under your breath, Steve. Yeah, so although Steve's not leaving the authority, he will be changing his role and Hannah will be stepping up. So it's the last time we will routinely see Steve in authority. So I wanted to place on record, I believe, all our thanks for the absolutely huge work Steve has done over the years. Thank you so much. Right, that's all the good news out of the way. Now we get on with some work. Apologies. I believe Sally has just let us know she can't make it today.
Yes, we've had apologies from Rick Hathwaite and Sally Lansbury this morning.
Great, thank you very much. Everybody happy with the minutes to the last authority meeting? Anyone want to raise any questions? Thank you. Right, straight on into chair's announcements, fire safety instructions. I'll just repeat it because we have got a large audience today. There is no fire alarm test, that's Thursdays. And if there is an alarm, out through the doors behind Tiffany and Juliet, and then around the building into the car park. Our meetings will be live streamed and recorded. Please make sure your microphone is switched on, and the recordings are on YouTube for 12 months. It's a great way to get sleep if you can't, struggling with insomnia, just watch one of our meetings. If you don't wish to be recorded, please let me know, and we can make sure that that's managed. Okay, everyone happy with that? Thank you. Couple of other things I just wanted to mention before we start into the main meeting. First of all, my apologies for the size of the pack. I know the officers have gone to great lengths to try and make sure we're really well informed, but I don't know how many of you found it, but I couldn't wade through it all meticulously to the degree I would have liked. It's a huge pack. So we have been chatting about that, and Gavin's committed. We'll carry on our work, which we've already been doing with Ben and others in the team, and Helen and Julie, and we've got some more work to do on that pack. So I don't want you to feel that a 500-page pack is something you can expect to see routinely. It will be slimmed down. It will be clear where decisions are made, and appendices will be available for those of you who want to drill into the detail. So more on that to follow over the coming meetings. It's work in progress, so any feedback be welcome. But I want to make, Gavin, any comments?
No, I think you picked that up well, Jim. So we will work on that ahead of September's authority.
And we've got a large amount of business to get through today, some very important business as well. Now, some of the reports, what you'll see in future agendas is they'll be split out as reports to note. So therefore, that's an indication that they've been debated probably elsewhere in another committee, and they're here just so that all members are cited on them, and then reports for discussion. And that's how we'll try and draw your eye to the topics we feel authority really needs to have a discussion on. There isn't a strict scrutiny, and there is always the opportunity to raise questions on any of the reports. That's why we bring them. But what I'm going to do is swap, I think, items 16 and 17, because that will give us 3 reports in a row that have been discussed elsewhere, and I'll come back to it at the time. But the aim will be just to move through those quite quickly. I would like to finish by 1 o'clock today, if we can manage it. So your help and support would be appreciated. I don't want to stifle debate, but could we please try and not debate and repeat what others have said? Helen, would you like to come in?
My apologies, Juliet. I forgot to give Juliet's apology. She has to leave at 1, so that would be a suitable time to end the meeting.
Where that often people have that, and Juliet had already mentioned it to me, so thank you for that. Yeah, that was quick update. So I'll try and steer us as we go into the agenda, but please take my steers as advice, not as stifling debate. I'm really concerned as my first meeting as chair to be seen as stifling debate on anything. Julie will keep me straight. Declarations of interest from anybody at this stage. Now, if topics come up, for example, a topic comes up that you do feel is strayed into an area you have some interest in, do please make that known at that point in the meeting, because you never know where the discussions will take us. But at the moment, no declarations of interest. No questions, but we do have a public participation in the form of a statement which Julie's going to read out for us now.
We have a statement and we also have an email. So the first email is from Janet Lefton, who is the owner of Belle Isle. She's asked me to read the email, but the first paragraph of the email is explaining why she isn't here today. So I'll skip that if you don't mind, because it contains information that's protected under the Data Protection Act. So the rest of the email reads as follows. I can see, however, from the amended plan that the proposal is that the Roundhouse and Belle Isle still be included in the Windermere Villas conservation area. I have strong support for the new conservation area, but do believe it is after the horse has bolted, and even now has not logically included property and land which should be included, especially the Windermere Villas in the North Lake and indeed opposite the land involved. This would preempt similar planning issues arising on that land. I have been given strong advice that the Roundhouse and Belle Isle should not be included, which agrees with the advice originally given by your professional advisors. It was not clear when we last recently spoke that you had even gone back to your professional advisors to take further advice regarding the inclusion of Roundhouse and Belle Isle or not. And as we discussed, I do not think you are personally entirely sure that Belle Isle should be included. The Roundhouse and Belle Isle are already well protected by Grade 1 and Grade 2 star listings, and as discussed with you, has considerable differences to the proposed Windermere Villas conservation area. For over a third of a century, I have worked well with the planning department in a positive manner, and this is the first time we have had a major disagreement. If Belle Isle and the Roundhouse were to be included, I will have no hesitation in taking the matter further. And am advised will be successful in getting Belle Isle and Roundhouse excluded. Surely this is an application neither party must want. I therefore ask you to finally reconsider. I then have received a statement from MWT Planning on behalf of Janet Lefton, which reads as follows. The following representation is made by MWT Planning on behalf of the owner of Belle Isle, who asks that members reconsider the proposed conservation area boundary and exclude Belle Isle. The owner does not dispute the significance of Belle Isle. Its importance is precisely why it is a Grade 1 listed building, set within a Grade 2 star registered park and garden, inside both the National Park and the World Heritage Site. It already carries the highest level of heritage protection the system can give. Significance is not the test for inclusion. The test under Section 69 of the 1990 Act is whether designation is desirable to preserve or enhance an area's character. Conservation area status exists to manage change, so the question before members is a simple one. What will this designation preserve or enhance on Belle Isle that is not already protected? The authority's own evidence answers that question. Annex 6 confirms that inclusion is not based on vulnerability, that there are no identified risks to the island's ongoing conservation, and that the only practical effect of designation would be a requirement to notify tree works. That is not a conservation benefit, it is an administrative burden. Belle Isle was never in the study area. The initial scoping exercise did not propose it. Donald Insel Associates, the heritage consultants the authority engaged to write the appraisal, did not propose it either. Both placed Belle Isle in the setting of the conservation area outside the line. It was added only after representations during the consultation, and Annex 6 records that the justification was written afterwards. That is conclusion first, evidence second, precisely what paragraph 204 of the Framework and Historic England's guidance caution against. Belle Isle is a detached island, and its inclusion would leave the authority with a fragmented 3-parcel conservation area. Its group value, its influence on the villa tradition, and its contribution to the outstanding universal value are all matters of significance and setting that are already fully protected and already material to decisions the authority takes. A line does not need to be drawn around the island for it to be conserved. Excluding Belle Isle does not weaken the proposed conservation area. It keeps the designation coherent, robust and defensible. It is therefore respectfully requested that should members choose to designate the conservation area, Belle Isle should not be included.
Thank you, Julie. What I'll do now is read our response, my response. So, dear Mrs. Lefton and Mr. Tong, thank you for your statements regarding the proposed Windermere Villas conservation area boundary. As requested, this matter has been brought to the attention of the authority. You'll appreciate this matter is agenda item 21 on our meeting today, and we will reflect on these statements as part of our consideration of the officer's report. If present, you are welcome to stay on for that item. Includes that section, Julie? Yeah, so
Yes.
we'll come back to that once we get to the main meeting. Will, you have a question?
Yeah, and you just said in terms of conflict of interest, I know the family personally and I actually sell from their property, so it's probably better to disqualify myself from that item.
Thank you, Will.
And my partner sails from the same location and is personally involved as well. So I will do the same.
Thank you very much. Okay. But then specifically to the discussions around Belle Isle for the wider conservation area, I hope you both still feel comfortable in contributing. Thank you. Good. Right. If Gavin needs to spend beyond our his delegated powers of authority, he actually requires the signature of the chair and the signature of chair of resources to support that. Now, I'm uncomfortable with having double signature on something, and I don't think that's appropriate. I will be stepping down a chair of resources because, again, for the same reason, I think it's inappropriate to sit on chair of two such significant committees. So I'm looking for a new chair of resources, please. And that will be in September. So I will be talking to you all between now and then. But in the interim, I propose we change the process. And if urgency powers are required, it will be Gavin, myself as chair, and Mark as deputy chair of Resources Committee. Is everyone happy with that? Julie, are you happy we can make that work?
Technically, we do not have a chair until until somebody's elected. So in the circumstances, I think that that would be acceptable.
Good. Thank you very much. Gavin, you're happy, just not all do.
I am, yeah.
Sure. Right, over to you, Gavin, for your report.
Thank you very much, Jim. Well, conscious of the scale of the agenda and in the interest of brevity, I don't intend to go over any of the content of my report, although I will happily take questions on it. Quite a bit of content there this time around. Instead, as I often do, I'll focus on a few updates and issues that have occurred since the report has been drafted. The first to flag, we're in an unusual position at the AGM when we fall between two chairs, as it were. Tiffany and I, normally Tiffany would update on National Parks England meetings. Tiffany and I attended the most recent meeting of NPE about 3 weeks ago, Tiffany. Very productive meeting. The new executive director of NPE clearly getting her feet under the table now and becoming increasingly effective in that job. The bulk of the time was spent, there were some formal matters around looking at governance arrangements and the constitution and one thing and another, but the bulk of the time was spent with our new exec director reflecting on her first few weeks and months in role, the scale of the task ahead and resources and priorities going forward. In terms of priorities, that we are keen, or rather the directors, because of course the chairs of the National Park Authorities are the directors of National Parks England, not the chief executives, but I think I can report on behalf of the directors they're keen to streamline and improve the operational efficiency and efficacy of National Parks England, and to strengthen its ability to respond on policy matters to central government. They will be the priorities over the coming year. And to do that, there will be potentially a need, if we want them to be really effective, for them to grow in scale and stature, and for them to increase their staffing team and their ability to really influence and engage on policy matters. So some proposals about how MPE may grow and become more effective were tabled and considered, and were supported almost universally by the directors and the chief execs that were there to support the directors. What we didn't conclude or resolve was how that should be funded. So these weren't decisions to grow the organisation. There was a general acceptance that if we want MPE to do its job for us as a family of national parks most effectively going forward, it will probably need to increase its capacity and its capability. But to do so, we will have to find a way of resourcing and funding that, whether that's externally, whether it's through seeking further funding through DEFRA, or whether it's increasing the contribution from individual national park authorities, is still to be determined. But other than that, I thought a helpful and effective meeting. What it also did was introduce us to two new members of the family, without stretching that metaphor too far. The chief executives, the new chief executives at both Dartmoor and Northumberland National Park were both present. So Tom Surrey down in Dartmoor, clearly getting to the grips with the job really quickly, and a name that will be familiar to many people, certainly the officer team, if less so the members, David Rennick in Northumberland, who has until recently been the Northern Regional Director of Natural England. So we're well used to dealing with and engaging with David, and we welcome them both into their new roles as chief executives. So next thing to flag would be the conclusion of our parish cluster meetings over recent weeks. They've gone really well. We've had a really mixed bag in terms of attendances across the different distinctive areas, I think it's fair to say, with some of those events being really well attended and others less so. And one of them having to be slightly altered into one-to-one meetings and one cancelled altogether. So we do need to reflect on the take-up in different distinctive areas. The meetings themselves were really useful, really effective, as ever, a focus on planning issues that are of that the parish councils are understandably engaged and passionate about, but a wider and interesting and stimulating debate on wider authority matters. I think what I took away from this year's meeting, and perhaps it's wishful thinking, but I certainly left the meetings feeling that there was a very different tone in terms of the relationship between the authority and parish councils, and particularly the understanding of our role and our function in visitor management has definitely changed amongst parish councils and hopefully with the public that they represent and serve. On that matter, Jackie, at her cluster meeting, kindly offered and suggested that the officer team could redistribute and remind parish councils in her cluster area of her own contact roles and her own ability to act as a conduit and a source of support and engagement with the authority. So if other Secretary of State parish council appointees are happy for us to do so, we may well take the opportunity to remind your parish councils all of your contact details, and that you are always interested in hearing their concerns and engaging with them on behalf of the park authority. Next thing to note that's taken place since the report was myself and Peter were both fortunate enough to attend our annual celebration of volunteering 2 or 3 weeks ago in Thirlmere. Absolutely fantastic event where we recognise the incredible contribution that our volunteers make to our services and offering at the authority. I think we concluded, Ben, didn't we, that the hours served by volunteers over the last year or so is the equivalent to about 25 full-time equivalent staff. So the equivalent of our entire ranger service out there working on a voluntary basis. I'm also always staggered to be handing out long service awards that are 10, 15, 20, 25 years, and in some cases even in excess of that. So we really celebrated and took the opportunity to thank those volunteers, and I'd like to place that on record here at the authority as well. I'd also like to thank the volunteering team themselves, who put together a great event and helped us thank and show our gratitude to those volunteers. While I'm celebrating as well, within the body text of my report, you'll note that we did attend the RTPI Planning Awards. That event has taken place. Sadly, we didn't scoop gold on this occasion, but we were the runners-up and were highly commended. So again, I'd like to place on record our appreciation and gratitude for the work that Rob and the strategy team have done there, and again, really welcome the fact that that's been recognised at a national award ceremony as well. Next point, I'd like to flag a point of order that fell out of resources, the last resources meeting. Members will be aware that we have been given an indicative settlement for the next couple of years of capital funding from DEFRA, which is a very welcome break from our funding model over recent years where we haven't been given any capital funding. We have been given an indication that we will be in receipt of capital funding in the 27, 28 and 28, 29 years. We've also been the welcome beneficiary, as every other English national park, of an uplift on our national park grant this year on a one-off, non-recurring basis. So we're in the extremely unusual position in recent history of having to think about how we invest those funds. Resources meeting discussed this at their last session. The officer team, just SLT, are working up proposals for how we could build both capital proposals for new expenditure and revenue proposals into future budgets. We've got a long list. I'm really pleased to say we are well overspent on both the revenue and capital envelopes, so that's a good thing. It gives us a pause for thought and reflection on where our priorities should be. The next step will be to seek member input and views on that. To achieve that, we are proposing to effectively not co-opt the resources meeting that will take place on the 1st of September, but to use that date and that space in the diary to get together members informally after the resources meeting so that officers can give you some presentations on the opportunities and the proposals that we've brought forward, and members can give us a steer on what you think about them, what we should be prioritising and what your priorities for a board are. So the invite for that will go out to all members, and we welcome all members, not just members of the resources meeting, to come and take part in that discussion. We intend to effectively have it as an extended away hour, probably away from Merley Moss somewhere, and as I say, an invite open to all members. So we'll get to save the date out as soon as we can on that, and I would encourage you all to attend so that we can have a really positive debate about how we invest some of the extra resources that we weren't anticipating this time a year ago. And the final point is a little bit one of administration, but as Jim has rightly pointed out, this is Steve's final authority, which as he moves into his new role, that means he also will relinquish his part-time but official role as the monitoring officer within the authority, one of the statutory roles that we have to have. So it's just to advise members that the proposal will be for Julie to become the authority's monitoring officer going forward, and for Ben Leasley, our head of HR and OD, to take on the deputy monitoring officer role. That, Jim, is it from me, and I'll take questions on any of that verbal update or indeed the content of my report.
If I could just build on that 1st of September date, really, to me, it's really important because we've got this one-off opportunity. So as many of you as possible, please, and do let Helen know, because we're looking at some, thought it'd be better in a slightly different environment, maybe a little bit more informal, but that costs money. So we'd like to know exactly how many people are interested in coming. And the final point, if you have ideas or suggestions, please submit them as quickly as you can. Just a short email outlining why you think there's the opportunity and why you think it's important. If you could get those in to Gavin and the team in the next couple of weeks, they can be considered. If they're not already on the long list, they can be considered and added to the long list. I think it's very important. We've already had one excellent idea where a combination of a car park could facilitate some toilets. Purchase of an existing car park could facilitate an improvement to that site. We could monetize it much more better, and we could add in some toilets which are very sorely needed in that location. So it's a win-win. But we're also looking for nature recovery opportunities as well. So, you know, opportunity for us to get involved with that. So please do send the ideas in. It's a very short window. And on the 1st of September, I want us to be really finalising those discussions for authority at the end of September, because we'll be running out of time to get the money sent. These programmes take time to deliver. So good. So any questions for Gavin on his report in general? Graham?
It's a query actually not mentioned in the report, which is a visitor management issue. Have we got anything to report regarding visitor services in Keswick? We're well into the tourist season, and we look like we're no further forward in providing any tourist information facility?
We are further forward, Graham. At the risk of pleading the fifth, we're still in commercial discussions with some potential sites, so I don't want to name them in the public part of the meeting, but happy to pick up with you privately or off the meeting. We are confident that we'll conclude those negotiations and we'll be able to offer a form of visitor information in the Keswick area by the time the peak summer season arrives. But those discussions are still live and ongoing, but happy to pick up in a little bit more detail outside of the meeting.
Okay, I'll see you later.
Good, thank you. We'll move on. Thank you, Gavin, for your report. So next is the minutes of committees, and we'll start with part strategy and vision, which is soon to be strategy meeting. Peter.
Thank you very much, Jim. I'm very happy to present the minutes of the meeting and answer any questions that anybody has.
Next, we've got Development Control Committee, Mark.
Minutes from March and April. If there's any questions, please ask. Once again, just as every authority, thanks very much to all the committee members who give their time and their consideration to all the applications. If you ever do watch planning committees from around the rest of the country, if you do that kind of thing, you'll see some are good and some have other things going on with them. And I'd like to think one of our committees, one of the the more functional ones, and that's partly because of the members that go and put their efforts into it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. So I'm happy to present the minutes from the resources meeting held on the 26th of February. Very happy to take any questions, but the main output from that we've already covered earlier in the discussion. And Conservation Covenants Board, Hannah, is that yourself?
Morning members, happy to present the minutes of the first Conservation Covenant Board meeting, which was on the 25th of March. This was their first meeting, so we established the governance approach for assessing Conservation Covenant applications. We discussed the decision criteria and risks and cost monitoring and the document expectations. We approved several schemes and set expectations for ongoing financial tracking and decision making. I'm happy to take any questions.
Good, thank you very much. Member representation on outside bodies and partnerships. So I have nothing to report. Tiffany, do you have anything you'd want to add there from last couple of months?
No, I think actually most of the things I've been involved with have already been covered in the Chief Exception report. Thank you.
Yeah. Anyone else got anything they would like to feed back to the committee on? No, thank you. If you do go to an external body or committee on behalf of the authority and do think there's something of interest, please let us know in advance of the meeting and we can line it up for you and potentially put a short paper in for members. Okay, right, now we're on to some of the substantive part of the meeting, and the next 4 or 5 items I hope we can go through relatively quickly, but as I say, if there's points to raise, please raise them. The first one is the appointment of members to serve on committees. So with Tiffany's help, we've kindly put together a proposal. Hopefully you've all seen it. Are you all happy with the proposals for members on committees? Go around and seeing nods. Tiffany?
I'm very conscious that Jenny Burke's name pops up 1, 2, 3, which and we had a discussion about this at Jenny's appraisal. So it may be that Jenny would like to drop off one of those committees as time goes along if it gets too much. So I just thought, in fairness to Jenny, I should flag that up for you, Jim.
Yeah, thank you, Jenny. I did recall Tiffany raised that with me. So have a chat with me outside the meeting as if whenever you feel it's too much and we can work something through. Thank you. Good. If everyone else is okay, can we pass? So members agree to the appointment to standing committees from the 1st of July to the 31st of July 2027. Who with that? Just one down. Appointments to outside bodies. Oh, sorry, Will.
I was just conscious the election fits into that period. And I just wondered where that stood. Hopefully we'll be elected and we'll be back on the committee.
I have to say, well, that's a really big worry of mine. We can't really make a comment on the elections. I think I was just about to realise I can't. is my experience over the years. It is quite challenging as chair when we go through these periods, but it's nature. We have to plan for it, and we will do. So, any insight from yourselves as a result of that would always be welcome. For example, if people were not planning to stand, etc., I'm sure you'd let me know.
From a procedural point of view, until that election takes place, you will be on the committee, and you will continue on that committee if you're re-elected until we're formally notified that you're appointed, up to a period of 3 months. So it would be helpful if you could let your nominating authority know that if you are re-elected, we need to know whether or not they are reappointing you or whether they are sending somebody else within that 3 months timescale. Thanks.
Move on to appointments to outside bodies and partnerships, our Commercial Strategy Board and our Conservation Covenants Board. So all of that's attached in the report. A lot of it falls together. A lot falls to the chair. Why did I sign up for this? If people have an interest in some of these bodies, particularly let us know, because things like Windermere Gateway, I'd very welcome a deputy on that, because you know, I can't get to every meeting, and similar with the other events. So if you're interested, let us know, because these things can develop. Everyone happy with the proposals for who's going to which meeting? Nods would be good, thank you. That's quite helpful. Okay, thank you. So quite a long set of recommendations. So people have agreed to the appointments of representations. So we've got Commercial Strategy Board and Conservation Covenants Board as well, which we'll keep under review. And yeah, and we've talked about paying travel and subsistence allowances, obviously. Everyone's okay? Yep, good. Right, next is 14, Performance and Risk Monitoring Report. This is one of those reports that I feel you should all be cited on, but we do give it a good amount of diligence in the resources meeting. So it's one of those, Pete, I think Ben's going to introduce this. And if you have any burning issues or want any clarifications, please do flag up. So over to you, Ben.
Perfect, thank you, Chair. So yeah, I thought I'd do an introduction because this is a paper that used to go to the Resources Committee. So it's a quarterly report based around our business plan and risks. And I think that it's important to note that when I present this, they're always in arrears. So for example, this is the Q4 report for the 2025 business plan. The business plan's adopted from the 1st of April, and therefore the Q1 update doesn't finish until next week. So it's a bit of a timing thing. Resources gets into the swing of this, but you may read some of these updates and think, oh, the game's moved on a little bit from this, but that's why. So just always keep in your head that it's in arrears. So moving on to the actual update. Q4, it's the end of year report. So the business plan actions are either complete or they're not complete, hence why you don't see any ambers. In the following quarters, you'll see potentially amber updates. So we have 19 business plan key actions, 15 of those have a green status, 4 have a red status, and within the report you can see a full update from the relevant head of service for those red updates as to why they are red. They can be found in table 2. And within the business plan, we also have 21 additional key actions. 18 of those have a green status, 3 have a red status, and again, all of the details can be found in the paper on table 4. So we also have overall service summaries, which is drafted by the head of service. 4 service areas are reporting a green status, and we have 1 service, which is development management, which continues to report as amber. Again, all of those updates can be found in Annex 3. Finally, within the report, we have risk management. So we have 15 corporate and business plan risks. None of those are at a critical or high level. There are 5 medium level risks with a current score below 10. And then we have 5 risks which have a current score above tolerance. So where any risks have been given an amber status, again, you'll see commentary within the paper as to why that's been given an amber status. We only had 1 risk that was closed in Q4, and that was the Brockall risk, which closed obviously once we handed Brockall over to a new provider. So just a final note, right at the end of the paper, we're going to leave the risk matrix in, because I think sometimes when we're talking about, oh, it's a 4 and low and a 6 and low, you may be thinking, I'm not too sure what you're talking about. So there's a matrix at the end which should be able to give you some insight into you know, the likelihood and the impact scoring and how we work it out, and it shows there as well where our risks sit. So yeah, so I've tried to keep it short and sweet because I know we've got a big agenda. So over to members for any questions.
Hi Ben, could you just remind me when did we commit to or aim to get net zero for the park, or is it for the authority? And follow up while Gavin's thinking.
This is why I'm doing it to no authority, because I can look to my colleagues.
Are we dependent on Russell and Moss to get to that, or have we got other options, or are we going to look for other options?
For the partnership plan, we're aligned to the Cumbria 2037 date, aren't we? And from memory, the commitment that sticks in my mind for the authority was 2030 to get to net zero. But you'll forgive me, Mark, I can't honestly remember if we've ever revisited that and adjusted that, because that will be challenging.
I think we're still in the 20th.
Yeah, I think it's still at 2030, and a lot will depend on finalising the whole estate accounting and working out what's going on our wider estate and how much carbon is already being sequestered as a landowner. That's always been the stalling factor, and also keen to define our methodology of assessing net zero in the most meaningful way, because I think there's a little bit of a tension for us as an authority if we have a lot of land holding that's sequestering carbon and then declare ourselves net zero at this point. That's a little bit challenging. There was also, it's coming flooding back to me now as well. I think what we needed to do was recalibrate a little bit to go with the Science Based Targets initiative. You have to have reduced your emissions by 90% from their baseline before you can then count any offsetting measures. So that's what we were having to reassess, how close we were to reducing 90% before we can conclude whether we'll be on track for 2030 or not.
Yeah. There's a lot to do with a relatively limited time to do it.
Any other questions, Sabina?
Thanks for that. Yeah, I'm interested in a couple of bits of detail. One of them is volunteering, which has gone red, and I was puzzled by that. So you can say a bit more. And the second one is what is quite a significant underspend on planning. Now, I don't know whether that's coming through. Well, we're wiring, aren't we? It's one of the recommendations that we sort of stick 100,000 to the reverse. Now, given that planning itself is still amber, I'm interested to understand why we weren't able to spend that money.
I can answer the volunteering one. So volunteering, we had within our service plan, we had two main objectives: expanding ranger volunteering within the south, and then expanding or reintroducing our visitor management volunteering. So we aimed to have that up and running by Easter, which we didn't do. So it's a mixture of reasons around defining the roles, but also we had some absence in staff. We need staff to be able to manage the volunteers and things like that. But we are hoping to have them in place for the summer, hence why it's red, because we wanted to have them in place by the end of the business plan year. We didn't do it, but we're hoping to have it in place, or at least started with some route of progression within the next couple of weeks.
Okay, thank you. Your next.
Thanks, Chair. Morning, members. So in terms of the planning revenue, Sabina, that's because income levels from planning applications went higher than anticipated, which is great news.
Okay, good. Any other questions? No. So members, we've reviewed the business plan and we've reviewed the corporate risks and the business plan risks and satisfied with the discussion on that. Thank you very much. Moving on, I think we're still with you, Ben, for the health and safety report.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So yes, this is our annual health and safety report. The report looks at the accidents, incidents and near misses for the 25-26 reporting year. and then also the proposed action plan moving forward for this year. So if I take you straight to Annex 1, it's the actual report that Catherine, who's sat in the room, does a fantastic job doing every single year. And the executive summary is a great place to start as to where we're up to. So we had 25 reported accidents last year. This is down significantly from previous years. Now, whilst less accidents is good, we did see a significant reduction in the number of public accidents that were reported, and specifically at Brockhall. So important context, at the beginning of 2025, we made a substantial amount of redundancies at Brockhall and ran effectively the site on more of a skeleton staff. This may mean either less activity on site means less accidents, or it may mean that we've had an issue of underreporting. Be assured that the reduced staffing didn't change our approach to health and safety in any way. Our policies and ways of working were adapted to accommodate for that lower staffing, and the audits done by the external provider were to count that as well. So public accidents have reduced, but the number of staff accidents, the number of staff accidents were beginning to creep up. We tried to look at trends to see why that would be. 14 of the 17 staff accidents were done in physical activities. And whilst we would prefer no accidents take place, we accept that in some roles, like rangers, for example, accidents do happen. We also look at age, and the age that were reported the most accidents were between 31 and 45. It's interesting because they're only 9% of the workforce, but 40% of all accidents. So in this age group, 6 of the 7 members of staff were new, and the Ranger team, in credit, had really pushed health and safety reporting within their induction, and the Ranger team have also been looking at their induction to make sure that health and safety practices are also as they should be. So within our health and safety report, we also look at near miss reporting. Near misses are fundamental because that's where we get so many of our lessons learned before accidents actually happen, and we encourage near miss reporting whenever we can. That said, the number of reports has decreased slightly this year, and similar to my previous explanation, we saw a drop off of near miss reporting taking place at Brockhall. We would like to see more near miss reporting taking place, and SLT push it whenever we can. Within those near miss reporting, we also include verbal abuse or unacceptable behaviour. That's just the area in which we push those reports through into. We see this particularly within our planning team, and we see it more regularly than we like. Andrew Smith's all over it with his team. He has all of the ways of working arrangements and reporting in place as he should, to minimise this, how it happens. We're also working with Julie's team and data protection to see how we can expand our effectively database of these incidents that happen, and to try and avert them from happening again. Finally, our internal management continues business as usual. So we have a health and safety provider, which is external. We have an active health and safety forum with all of the staff represented from different departments. We do regular comms about health and safety, and then we have an ongoing live action plan. I invite any questions.
Thank you very much, Ben. Very, very important for us. Anyone got any questions on the report for Ben? So Jenny, sorry, thank you.
So you said about the age group of accidents being reported. Is there any way that you can get the other age groups to actually bring that up to speed as well?
Within the Ranger team, which is where we did have those sort of accidents, there's a lot of I don't know how to describe it, sort of reporting and team working after the event. So they work in teams to address the problems and think of new ways of working to avoid them. So if it's a new check in terms of how to hitch a trailer, they'll do that as a team. It won't be in isolation.
Okay, everyone all right? We're happy to sign that off, and thank you, Ben, for the work on this and the report. Right, moving on to the next item. I'm bringing forward item 17. So Peter, I assume it's over to yourself for the draft out to. And again, we had a thorough discussion on this in the Resources Committee meeting.
Thank you, Chair. Yes,
we did have a thorough discussion of this at the resources meeting. So just I'll briefly set out the contents. This is the draft outturn. So the accounts for 25-26 are still being finalised. They're due to be published at the end of June and then will be subject to audit. So these figures are provisional, but I would say our track record in terms of audit adjustments on usable reserves, so the resources that members have control over, has been pretty good. So I would hope that there wouldn't be much change to what's reported here. Overall, the position is favourable, so similar to what we reported in period 9. We have underspent against working budget. Most of that was anticipated when we set the medium-term financial plan in March, so it has been slightly better than that, but a lot of it was anticipated, like I say, in the forward plan. The details of where the variances are set out in the report. I'm not intending to go through those in any detail. Capital programme, a key risk was spending our 1.5 million DEFRA grant in line with their guidelines. So I'm happy to say that was utilised in full. I guess people who have parked in the car park will see the glorious solar canopy, which is one of the things that we spent it on. Obviously, if you've been around to look at the chargers, obviously we've got a fleet of vehicles where we purchased them outright, where they'd previously been leased to generate cost savings. And again, in the annex, you'll see exactly where that was spent. And again, I won't go through that in detail here. The only other thing to flag, which is in addition to what we discussed at the resources meeting, is in relation to the 2026-27, so this year's capital programme. So we did set a sort of provisional capital programme at the end of March, and similar to previous years, the actual grant settlement figures were quite late in the day coming. So DEFRA did finally confirm the capital allowance for 26-27 of about 1.6 million, plus an additional 167k in relation to Access for All works. So these are kind of ring fenced for doing accessible path works generally. So also included in the pack is a revised capital programme for 2026-27. Previously, Resources Committee would have been able to approve that, but obviously Resources Meeting can't approve anything. So that's why that's come here for approval. In addition, I think Sabine mentioned about the planning income. So again, just to clarify, that's really a timing differences where there were some large planning applications came in at the end of last year. So we've had a lot of income up front because people pay their planning fees up front, and essentially the cost to deliver that will probably fall into a subsequent year. So it looks like it's a surplus, but Andrew has a ring-fenced reserve to manage differences in timing like that. The only other thing I'll add is on the capital programme, in addition to what we discussed at the resources meeting, there's also an additional 250,000 in relation to the K2T extension. So this is an ongoing project that we're already doing. We're still sort of formulating what the expenditure might be in this year at the time we set the original capital programme. So again, that needs to be included. It should be fully grant funded. It is a partner project with Cumberland and West London Furnace and the Highways Agency to extend the K2T between where it currently ends off Threlkeld, to extend it to just about where our northern office is as part of a wider Seymour Lake District cycling scheme, which members may be aware of. I'll leave it there. If there are any specific questions, happy to answer. Thanks.
Comments or questions? No, thank you all very much. So we note the positive end to the year. Thank you. We've approved the movement of reserves. Thank you. And we approve the updated capital programme. They're really important now because we don't do that in resources anymore. I'll just take this opportunity to mention and to thank both Peter and Mark, who are working on more simplified financial reporting with Pete and the team. So we're hoping that as we go forwards, now these reports have to come to authority, we can simplify them a little bit so us lay people can understand them a little bit more easily and interrogate them more. But it's a good financial position. Thank you very much. Right. Now that concludes the quickly for note items. What we're into now is items that potentially deserve a bit more discussion. So the first one is review of members' allowances, which hasn't been to any committee. It's been produced by Peter, who will talk us through it in a moment, but this hasn't been interrogated or tested elsewhere. So the opportunity today is for us to talk that through, make a decision whether to proceed or not. So Pete, over to yourself.
Thank you, Chair. Yep, so this follows on from, I think we had a discussion at in the away hour at the last authority meeting, just flagging that although the members' allowances scheme has been reviewed in the last year, I think as part of Julie's large review of the handbook, we did make some changes to it. In terms of substantive changes to any of the allowances, particularly the basic allowance, that hasn't been reviewed in over a decade. So it felt like it was probably time to look at the substance of it, not just I guess the words around it. So in terms of the importance of the allowance, obviously it's set under regulation. So there is a way we have to approach these, which is set out in regulation, and local authority members will be probably very familiar with that. What it doesn't do is tell you what the amounts should be. So we have local discretion around actually what the figures should be. So we've done some benchmarking against other national parks, and we felt ours was sort of mid-range. Some pay more, some pay less. I guess the key thing is that actually it's in the context of our authority. Does it feel reasonable? On reviewing it as well, there was some allowances, so such as the computer allowance, which maybe 10 or 15 years ago felt more appropriate as things like, I guess, internet at home and use of IT equipment was possibly less part of everyday life, whereas nowadays probably everyone's got internet at home and there isn't much claiming against that IT expense. Obviously, the authority provides IT equipment. So in terms of the adjustments, so paragraph 10 in the report summarises really the bulk of the changes that we're proposing. The detailed appendix obviously has it in detail, but essentially we're proposing to remove the IT allowance, which was a discretion that members could claim IT costs if they wish to. And we're saying actually more in line with what a lot of the other parks have done, is to roll that into the basic allowance. It's just part of ways of working nowadays. So that would increase the £3,000 basic allowance up to £3,250. And the other, I guess, major change that we're proposing is that rather than having to come and sort of review this every year and say, well, is 3,250 still the right figure? A lot of other authorities, I think, including Cumberland and Westmorland and Furness and most of the other parks, have included a provision to do an annual indexation, generally pinned to the employee pay award. So again, we felt like that was a sort of reasonable approach. And again, that's suggested as a change. If you include an annual indexation every 4 years under the regulations, you still have to go back and then kind of reset it again. It can't just sort of drift on ad infinitum. The other thing I'll just flag is around the travel and subsistence allowances. So at the moment, members and members of staff have slightly different rates. We felt it just made sense to harmonise those. In addition, the staff rates, we included a discretion again for annual CPI uplift, so that will apply equally. And some of the rates that are a bit more prescriptive, so around about hotel stays and things like that, again in the staff allowances, we said, well, obviously you're expected to exercise discretion and apply value for money in all your decision making. But if we've set a limit that says, well, the hotel allowance for London is £200, you have a meeting you have to go to and you can't find a hotel for less than £200, there's a mechanism in there to say, well, with prior approval, obviously, you know, if you've got to go to the meeting, because I guess with inflation and some hotel rates, I guess if you wanted to go to London on the night of the World Cup final, for example, you might struggle to get accommodation. So there's a bit more discretion built into the scheme. The only other thing I'll flag is, so we've mentioned HMRC rates. So people who may have looked at the annex in detail will see that the rate when we wrote this was 45 pence on the mileage. Obviously that's gone up to 55 pence. And obviously the intention is we're not going to come back and ask for permission every time HMRC changes a rate. The principle will be the rates are pinned to what HMRC set with discretion. So obviously when rates go up, there is a cost impact, so subject to us as officers being happy that it's not generating a really big budget issue, we'll pin it to the HMRC rates the same as the staff. I'll leave it there. If there's any detailed questions, happy to answer. Thanks.
Thank you, Pete, and thank you for the work and the background in doing this. So over to the floor. I'd really appreciate some thoughts and comments from everybody, please. Tiffany?
Yes, we did, as you rightly say, have a discussion of this at a previous webinar. I think it's a really helpful paper. It sets out very clearly what's proposed. It seems a very sensible amount that's proposed. I don't think we need to worry too much about HMRC rates being raised too often. I can't remember the last time it was raised. It was probably even longer ago than a member's allowance. And I think the sort of future proofing is very sensible. And I think one of the points made in the paper, which is the allowance is both a reward for a job we hope well done. Nobody's ever going to get rich on a National Park member's allowance, but at least it's a contribution. But we hope also that as it sets a slightly more realistic figure, it's perhaps for those people for whom it matters more as part of their overall income, and might encourage a wider diversity or pool of people that we might be able to attract, which I think is one of the issues for us and for other national parks at the moment. So I think I'm very happy with what's proposed in here.
Thank you, Tiffany. Suzanne, are you looking to come in?
So
and then
I'll hand up first. Okay, thank you. Just about the computer allowance, I just wondered, being one of the relatively new members, I wasn't offered any IT equipment when I started, and I'm just wondering about the other newer members of the board. And just, I understand what you're saying, that we've all got computers that we all use, and it's silly, we all got broadband and internet access. But if myself now, because I'm not going to be getting the computer allowance, and other members start asking for it, there's going to be quite a big implication for the park if I then now come to you and say, well, I want an iPad, and a few of others ask for an iPad. Whether or not it's a bit of a false economy to remove the computer allowance to members rather than the cost of maybe having to provide IT equipment for those of us then who want it.
Firstly, apologies if you weren't offered any IT equipment, Suzanne. We should have had that discussion and certainly made iPads or rather tablets available. I'll defer to Pete, but over the life cycle of a typical piece of kit that we give you, I suspect that it'll be a saving for us, because typically an iPad, a tablet or whatever is going to last 3 years or so, whereas £250 a year would add up to £750. That won't be the cost of the tablet, etc. So I would imagine, and to be honest, we probably get more than 3 years out of the typical pieces of kit that we're issuing. So I think generally the view is if we can supply the kit, that's more effective from a cost point of view. And of course, the allowance itself has been uplifted to effectively include that, although that does negate the sort of general inflationary uplift. But that's the general principle. But I do apologise if you weren't offered any ICT equipment. If you've got those needs, please pick it up with Pete directly, and he'll make sure that you get what you need.
Mine's just a quick clarification. You said CPI. What's CPI?
Sorry, yeah, consumer price index, just a general inflationary index. Yep.
Thank you, Chair. When we have these discussions at various councils with which I've been involved, we're always a little bit embarrassed and we don't like talking about it. But then we can always say, well, it's really not up to us, but it's up to the independent remuneration panel. Do we not have any method of an independent appraisal for these things rather than purely internal?
You're right, and in terms of the regulations, they're quite specific around when an independent remuneration panel would apply. So like say members of West London, Furness and Cumberland, exactly like you said, is that they have to follow the recommendations of an IRP. As part of our process, we have to refer to the findings of IRPs for members who are in other organisations. So we've had to kind of look at the West London, Furness and the Cumberland one, but obviously they're very different roles, so the amounts are not comparable. So the bit that we have pulled in from there was this mechanism of indexation, which seems to be a common feature of most of the schemes now. So in terms of the actual rates, I guess the independence, I mean, you're right, you're being asked to vote on your own allowance. I guess the independence comes from the officers, I guess, have done the background research and prepared what we see as a reasonable figure. So there is some segregation.
I think that's the important point from my point of view, Phil. This is an officer-driven report. This is me and Pete making some recommendations based on looking at other park authorities and other councils that do have independent remuneration panels as well, and saying we think this is the right level of remuneration. So this isn't something that's been driven by you as members. These are officers' recommendations. So there is a degree of impartiality and independence. And although I ultimately answer to you as a board, you've just been with Suzanne. I've just said I think the best value for the money for the authority is to not have that computer allowance as an example. So from my point of view, that independence comes from this being driven by an officer view of what's appropriate for you as members. Ultimately, you now have to vote on it.
Graham.
It's just a thought. If we've got indexation going forward that we're going to approve, should that not apply retrospectively for the period before the last uplift for consistency, rather than a sort of a figure sort of plucked out of thin air, if you like, on the past levels? Is the uplift consistent with what we're doing in the future, if you like? Is that something we considered?
Not sure I've quite followed, Graham, sorry.
Right. We talked about how we're going to look after the value going forwards. Are we applying that same rationale to the uplift retrospectively, or do we just come up with that figure from some other mechanism?
It's effectively been more driven, and I'll defer to you here, Pete, but it's more about benchmarking with other national park authorities, with other local authorities, and trying to work out what effectively the market rate is, and then reflecting the local circumstances is how we've come up with that figure. Going forward, that index link is there, but what's important, I think, is under the regulation, as Pete said, is that in 4 years' time, you've got to review that in any case, so that there's always that point of the regulation saying, no, you've got to stop and take stock to make sure that you're still comfortable. And again, I would imagine that exercise would be benchmarking against other authorities and considering the demands of the job. If you were to retrospectively apply it, I guess the problem is, at what point have you ever set it and taken stock? You know, it's just going back and then uplifting a number effectively. So I think the approach we've taken is probably the best that you can to determine what is a difficult thing. There isn't a market out there that will determine market value, is there? So all we can do is look at what other authorities have done and then think about the local circumstances and the pressures and challenges that are unique to being a member of the Lake District National Park Authority.
So Julie will just add to that.
Yeah, just to say that members have reviewed this historically, and up until recently have always indicated that they just wanted things to stay the way that they were. So papers were never brought because it was an indication from members that they didn't require them to be brought to this committee. So I'm not sure, following on from Gavin's point, where you would actually take that point from. You have asked us to review it, so we now have reviewed it, and these are the proposals, if they're acceptable.
I think there's two other contexts I'd had here in my mind. Is because I'm sure we all feel a little bit uncomfortable reviewing our own pay. The first is that there is the option for members to opt out, which is something I was actually unaware of till I read the paper. So if people feel magnanimous enough, they can do that. So I thought, oh well, that's quite nice. And the second is, this isn't really for us. This is for future people on the board. And I've seen discussions around this campaign for national parks, for example, say we need a more diverse board, but they've actually raised the fact that it's a barrier to people unless you're a of an age and retired and have a bit of time on your hands, it's not a lot of money. So if you are, like Juliet, going to give us a chunk of your time, we need to make sure that the rate reflects that. So maybe also think about that in terms of helping us, as Tiffany said, diversify and bring people in from a wider community. Good. Any other comments, thoughts, feedback before? No, could I ask for a show of hands on this? Because I think it's quite an important discussion. So all those in favour of the recommendation to approve the scheme for members' allowances, please, would you show me hands? Anyone against? No, so passed unanimously. Thank you very much. It's an important decision. I just wanted to make sure we were clear. I'm going to propose that we just do the partnership plan and then have a break. So if you can just hang on for that last few minutes and haven't drunk too much tea this morning, we'll make a start. So Veronica, are you taking us through this? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. Morning, everybody. As members will be aware, the current partnership plan, which is our joint management plan for the National Park and World Heritage Site, expires in October 2026. So over the last 18 months or so, the partnership, 24 organisations, including the authority, have been together drafting a new plan. We went out to public consultation late last year, earlier this year, and that consultation has helped to improve and refine the plan. From the paper, you'll be aware that members have had considerable input to the drafting of the plan way back from Glaramara late 2024, but through lots of Park Strategy and Vision committees and most recently strategy meeting. And members' views have also been represented at partnership workshops, shaping the plan through both the authority chair and the chair of Park Strategy and Vision. I'm really happy to report that the partnership at its last meeting on the 12th of May agreed the plan in the form that you see before you should come forward to authority for your consideration for adoption. Before we move to that point, however, there are two pieces of information that I need to share with members. The first is in the paper that is before you. We have commented that we had had no response from UNESCO. That was true until last week. The draft plan was sent to UNESCO at the end of last year. We received comments from ICOMOS on behalf of UNESCO at the end of last week. So I just want to very briefly raise the points that they have made to us in summary. The first, happily, is positivity about the clarity of the plan and that it's an easy to read document, which obviously all of us involved with drafting it are very pleased to hear. However, they did raise concerns about the future of traditional agro-pastoral farming system and the importance of working with the farming community. And they also raised concerns about how the plan would be delivered for the benefit of the World Heritage Site. And that was including around partnership governance structures, how decisions would be made, and the action plan. I'm very happy to report, though, that given the number of months between the plan going to UNESCO and the draft before you now, happily the partnership has already amended the plan to cover quite a number of ICOMOS's concerns, particularly around missing measures of success, strengthening our references to farming, and also explaining governance mechanisms and how the plan will be delivered. And as officers, we're confident that other issues raised by ICOMOS are either being addressed through the associated action plan or through the work that we're doing for the World Heritage Site in terms of state of conservation reporting. So that piece of work does cover the drafting of an agro-pastoral system strategy for the Lake District. Government has been very clear with UNESCO all along that it couldn't guarantee that we could accommodate any comments from them if they arrived very late in the day. And indeed, they did advise us that we should move towards adoption, having not received any. This advice was reiterated to us by Historic England last week as the government's advisor on the historic environment. And we are separately working with Historic England to support government in responding to ICOMOS and UNESCO. So that's the first point to raise with you. The second is the need to make a minor amendment to a paragraph which clarifies the difference between the authority's business plan and the partnership action plan. And I'm going to defer to our solicitor to explain why that's necessary.
So it relates to paragraph 85 of the document, which is talking about the action plan. And so that paragraph currently reads, the action plan is a separate document to the partnership plan and is kept up to date through regular review to enable an agile response to new opportunities or challenges that require a course of action. It initially identifies actions for the first 2 years of the plan, 2026 to 28. I am proposing that we add the following additional wording. The action plan does not form part of the Lake District National Park Authority's statutory management plan. This is because many of the actions contained within the action plan are the responsibility of other partner organisations. Those actions that form part of the Lake District National Park Authority's statutory management plan are contained within the authority's business plan. The reason for making that amendment is that under section 66 of the Environment Act, we have to produce a management plan containing a statement of our policies for managing and carrying out functions. And then because legislation has changed somewhat with the Levelling Up and Regeneration Act, there's a requirement that our plan contains concrete targets and actionable measures to further our statutory purposes. So from our point of view, there are actions within the delivery plan which are the responsibility of other partners to undertake. Some of those are their statutory responsibilities, and as such, our influencing them is okay. Our dictating what they do, which we would have to do if it was a statutory plan, is not, because we would be acting outside of our powers if we were telling other authorities how to do their job and satisfy their duties. So in practice, what that wording does is it says that the statutory plan that we adopt, the actions within the delivery plan that attach to that are going to be and are reflected in our business plan. And our business plan also has other statutory functions that we don't have in the partnership plan that we do on a day-to-day basis. It just tidies things up from a legal point of view, makes sure that we are not seen to be acting outside of our statutory powers when we are dealing with some of the actions that other partners are going to be dealing with. In practice, it doesn't actually affect the way in which things work currently. The partnership has the plan, we adopt it. The delivery actions the partnership deals with, we pull those delivery actions into our business plan, and everybody works at both and are held accountable to both plans, as indeed the other partners will be held accountable for their business plans and the things that specifically relate to them. So if you want me to repeat that wording again, I can do so, but otherwise I'll hand back.
And all I was going to add in conclusion then, Chair, was that I'm really pleased to recommend the plan to you and hope that you will be in agreement that it is ready to go through for adoption. We would obviously need to take into account Julie's additional wording, as well as the 2 recommendations that are set out in the paper before you. Thank you.
Thank you, Veronica. Peter, would you like to add a few words, please?
Thank you, Jim. Yes, I'll have just say a couple of things. So this, as Veronica has said, is the culmination of many months' work by many people, and I think it's gone to public consultation, and what we have before us is a really good plan. I think it has really clear objectives, really clear measures. it has a manageable number of measures and objectives and is achievable. There has been robust discussion and debate in the development of it, and I can assure members that I, on behalf of members in the Park Authority, have pushed on some particular issues and agendas, and I think that some of the actions and some of the targets are stronger as a result of the conversations that we've had. So I'm pleased to say that that's happened. I don't really have anything other to add other than that, other than to say I recommend this for approval.
Thank you. Right, come back to recommendations. We'll start with Sabina.
Okay, can I just echo Peter's word? I think it is a really good plan. A lot of work's gone into it. It's coherent, really clear, and hopefully form a good basis for framework for work going forward. I have one substantive issue with the latest iteration, which has changed as a result of consultation. Now, bear with me, it's a little complicated. So this is in relation to our objective to create more access for all in particular, and sort of max out on the health benefits, etc., of the national park. And the consultation asked us to strengthen the measures associated with that suite of objectives, which is right. I'm completely behind that. That's good. Unfortunately, I think the measures that we've chosen are disappointing. And I just spent a couple of moments talking about why I think that is. And the bottom line is I would like to have them taken out and replaced with some other text. Now, I think there are two reasons these measures are disappointing. One of them is they are old measures. They have been around for years, and they're all about mileage, basically. So many miles of paths maintained. Of course, you have massive 3,000 kilometers or something of paths that we're looking at. And what I would say is these might have been good measures 5 years ago, 10 years ago. The last 5 years, the way the park is being used, as we all know, has massively changed. Every day of the week, I see a new demographic on the hillside, walking paths I never used to walk before, and enjoying the park in completely different ways. And so I think we've missed a really important opportunity here to update what we're doing. More importantly, these are also output measures. They're entirely focused on mileage. Now, and they're not focused on people's actual experience. Now, we all know that those sorts of mechanical measures can be quite useful. We can't find anything else, but they don't reflect the experience of the users, which is what we should be focusing on. Now, I think when people might argue, well, yes, but you're still quite decent measures, let's leave them in, kind of thing. I would argue we shouldn't. We all know what gets measured gets done. That's where the priorities goes, that's where the money goes, rather than standing back from it and saying, well, what is it we should actually be doing? So let me give you a couple of examples of what we might do in addition to what we're doing now, which isn't there. We have an extremely successful and oversubscribed program of national park walks run by volunteers. An area which has gone red at the moment because we're not putting enough resources in, I suspect, although you stop short of saying that. Now, it is at least arguable that we would make a much bigger contribution to people's enjoyment and access to the park, and a wider range of people who are not confident out there. And I have been on these walks to see what they're like. If we put more resources into that, then another 10 kilometers, 100 kilometers, whatever we're doing. Equally, another example that would make a big difference to access, I think, is getting people better maps. Now, some national parks have got downloadable walks maps. That would make a huge difference to the people I meet on the hills every day, completely confused what they're doing. So I'm not saying we should do that or not do that either way. This is an example of the kinds of things, the kind of work we should be looking at in support of our objectives. And as I say, I completely agree with consultation. We should strengthen that area of work. We should just do a lot better than we're currently proposing on page 41. So I would like those measures removed, replaced with some text saying we're working on it. I think we were doing that in one or two other areas. I don't know if that's still stuck. But, you know, we also have a little bit of time before we publish. I think people will understand this is about getting it right. It's also an area where all the partners will be very interested. It is a primary function of us as the park. And people will be looking to us to lead that work and be really clear about what we think the best ways of delivering objectives. So I don't think there's the same problem that might be in one or two other areas where it's like transport, where there have been very difficult and lengthy discussions with the rest of the partnership. And if we unpick that now, things will go a bit difficult. I think this is an area where we have the flexibility. We should take it and we should get it right. And we should get it right now. It's been at least 5 years since the pandemic where the use of the park has massively changed. We have had this discussion on and off for the last 5 years. Let's use this opportunity to get it right.
Thank you for your explanation. And Hannah, Steve, who wants to come back?
Thank you, Sabina. I think the team may want to come back as well, but I did want to just to come in about your point about the measure not being about how people experience the national park. I would view that differently, I have to say, that the Rights of Way network is the fabric of the national park. It's the way everybody experiences their visit, even if they don't see it as they're coming for a walk. They might be going to the lake for access to water or paddleboard. They tend to use the Rights of Way network to do that. This measure actually measures the ability for them to navigate that. So there might be, it measures how well signed that route is, whether it's obstructed by overgrowth, whether if it's on one of our more popular routes, whether there's gates and stiles that are in good condition. So in terms of how people experience and enjoy, which relates to the objective, I would strongly say that it is fundamental to what the national park is here for. I would also say that it has been considered by the partnership and they have agreed that it is a robust measure. So I just wanted to make that point with absolute respect of the view, and also that we have other measures in there which relate to understanding the health and well-being benefits that the national park plays in terms of the nation. So there's a bit of a mix there, which I feel is a useful mix of measures. I don't know if the team want to add anything further.
I think the only thing I would add is that the objective is obviously around inspiring people, and the last measure is particularly designed to ensure that we are much more strategic as a partnership about how we engage with both residents and visitors. And that's why there is a proposal for a joined up network to increase both volunteering opportunities and engagement opportunities. So I think that hook is there.
Sabina, you obviously disagree. Is there something here we should be looking at as we go forward rather than stop the derailing where we are now is where I'm coming?
I think that's a fair question. And if this was the first time I'd been here, I would say absolutely. Gavin is smiling at this. I have been here for some years and told we'll look at it next time around kind of thing. So I'm slightly reluctant to back down. On the Rights of Way network, I take Hannah's point, but only up to a point. Because the people I see, they don't even know the difference between a right of way and a trot and a desire line and this, that and the other. And they spend as much time elsewhere. And there's plenty in the 3,000 kilometers of rights of way. There are plenty of kilometers that never see, a footfall from one year to the next. So I don't think that is a measure of how people experience the Lake District, and therefore where we should be putting our resources. So I just made, for the avoidance of doubt, the sort of three measures that I was looking at are the very numerical measures, which are per mile, not the whole lot, obviously, but the kind of, percentage of the 3,000 kilometers, the percentages of the miles with stiles and the kilometers of miles with miles without stiles, sorry, get my teeth in, which I just think, I'm not saying we should absolutely abolish them overnight, but they should not be the thing that we measure by whether we're inspiring people, because they don't. In no way does do a few kilometers measure whether we're inspiring people or not.
I'll come in, Jim. I guess at the heart of the issue here is we start to address the fundamental tension that exists between the governance of the partnership and the governance of the authority, and that's where you can see all the whispering between me and Steve. We absolutely stand by, and I think everyone in the room probably does as well, that the partnership's the right delivery mechanism. It's the right way to develop your management plan. But when we reach this point as the authority that adopts it statutorily, when it's already been approved with the partnership, you get into this ping pong situation, don't you, between the two houses, for want of a better phrase. I have absolute sympathy, Sabina, and I can understand tactically why removal of them puts a different emphasis on the partnership. But that fundamentally starts to alter the document that the partnership have approved as well. I think there is potentially another way through, and I can understand your frustration at times and the knowing looks that we have at each other, because the other way around, as you as members may choose to approve the document, but then alter the recommendations to say that you want the officers to request that the partnership reviews these measures and considers and reflects on them, or you may say that actually even without out with the partnership, we want you as an authority to look at those measures and establish them. Either of them are open to you, and I suspect that's the route forward. That means we don't derail the plan necessarily, and we can improve the text as it appears, but you've still given yourself a record in the minutes and a note in the recommendation that tasks us with going and either challenging the partnership and asking Celia and the team to review it further and adapt and amend, or you tell us to do that in parallel to the partnership plan.
Yeah, that I'm happy to settle for that. I think it's both, probably. It's we're agreeing it's subject to you seeing whether you can get the partnership persuaded to find a different form of words, and we can discuss offline what that might look like. We just is clear about the fact that, you know, with that next paragraph that says the measures below are output measures, we are actively working on, you know, more effective measures which are from X, that kind of thing. And if that for some reason fails, that we pick that up as a business plan action in any case for our own business plan. I would be happy to settle for that kind of form of words.
I think we've found a good way through. Thank you very much. So I've got 3 more speakers. Jackie.
It was just, I think it's been debated for a long time, this partnership plan. It's gone round and round the tables. And for me, we've got to, and yeah, I come from a world where you under promise and over deliver. And I think the measures that are in there are the right direction, and hopefully we'll over deliver on them.
You, Matt.
Yeah, my point is similar to what Jackie and I think actually Gavin have touched on there. I think this, while I sympathise with Sabina's point about the almost arbitrary nature of it, this is a quantitative measure, and what I think Sabina's probably driving at is that we should be emphasising more data gathering and more standard setting around qualitative experiences. So maybe if we just include that as a recommendation that we would like over the course of the implementation of this partnership plan, that each partner looks at, you know, quite deeply at how they gather more qualitative feedback from all of their core user groups, because again, everyone's user groups and agendas and demographics will be slightly different within the partnership, and that we just really drive that over the period of this plan to gather that experience data. I completely accept that, you know, the world has changed since 2020 in the pandemic. We know that that was the context with which many of the newer members of this authority have come into this room. So how do we capture that information over the course of the next 5 years? You know, these targets and measurements are part of the overall framework, and I agree with what Jackie said, they have been debated. And we have to come to some sort of agreement, and the more we go down the rabbit hole is getting the exact sort of metrics agreed, you know, it just becomes an unending process. So let's challenge ourselves, maybe as a recommendation, to over the next 5 years gather as much qualitative data and feedback as we can from all of our user groups, which will help inform implementation of this plan and development of the next one.
Thank you. Peter, did you want a minute? Anyone in? Mark?
Can I just clarify, by adopting this plan,
are we signing up to a framework that should be taken into account when, you know, strategy and policy going forward? Are we signing up to a commitment to implement this plan?
Sorry, can you clarify those two options?
So there's a big difference between signing up to a framework that sort of informs policy as opposed to a commitment to enact these policies or these plans.
Well, I think it's the latter. This is a commitment action. Hannah, do you agree?
Sorry to not be absolutely clear, but I think it's both, Mark. So the plan is presenting a vision, and the vision is what we would be tested on, for instance, at inquiry for the local plan. So it sets the direction for the national park, and it's in terms of hierarchy, it sits at the top, and the local plan, for instance, is a means of delivering that through policy in terms of development. So it's setting the strategic direction for the national park. So that's a yes to your first part of the question, but it also contains some targets which we're debating now, some of which have come directly from DEFRA, and we will be held to account on delivering those targets. So that's the Protected Landscapes Targets and Outcomes Framework. We're also accountable for the other commitments in terms of our public and holding us to account as to in terms of what we're delivering outside of those DEFRA targets as well. So it's both, I would say.
Julie, did you want to just?
Yes, it might help if I clarify things from a legal point of view, because for me that makes it clearer, but whether that'll make it clearer for you or not, I don't know. So the authority is obliged to produce certain documents. The first document is the State of the Park report, and what that does is it says this is where we are now. We then have to adopt a management plan, and the management plan says this is where we want to be, this is how we're going to get there, and these are the targets that we're going to set ourselves. And that's our statutory commitment. And in producing that, we have to consult with a number of other organisations. We as an authority took a decision many years ago now that actually it would be better for us to set up a partnership and have all of the people that we would normally consult, plus others, to sit down and to pool their resources, to pool their knowledge and produce a partnership plan that we would then all work towards within Cumbria. And to save us doing the work twice as an authority, we said, right, well, what we're going to do is we will adopt the partnership plan as our statutory management plan. Now, what's become apparent because of subsequent legislation, mainly the Levelling Up Act of 2023, is that some of those actions we can't have as our statutory management plan because we're not the organisation that's going to deliver them. So it goes back to Hannah's point. The plan itself is an overarching document, and it tells us as an authority from a statutory point of view what we've got to do. The delivery plans, the bit that we have to do is in our business plan. The bit that everybody else does is in the delivery plan, and that's why this time round we've made the distinction between the two. So that's how I see it legally, and I don't know if that helps, but I'm hoping you might find it useful.
Okay, thank you. So I heard a couple of suggestions that we had a good discussion on this issue. We should move to conclusions. So can I propose a number of things that aren't fully covered in the objectives? So number one is we agreed the wording, we trust Julie, we delegate to Julie to finalise the wording on the plans. Number two, the specific recommendation to review the measures, I think it's for the Access for All, ideally to enhance those measures through the partnership, but if we can't successfully do that, that we would adopt them internally. Sabina, is that happy? That for your point? And on that basis, with those two, call them caveats, members adopt the partnership plan as the management plan for the Lake District and the World Heritage Site. Everyone happy with that?
Can I just clarify, Jim, the second one about we're not going back to the partnership asking them to change anything?
No, we're suggesting we might enhance it, but we're not suggesting we change anything at this point. The plan is the plan, Peter. Yeah, we're not reopening the plan. That's really important for people. But as with any plan, you will always review.
We can see, Sabine, I think what I had in mind is we approve the plan and we adopt the plan as it stands, but we make a request to the partnership to review those measures and consider if there are better alternatives, additions, removements, all the rest of it. If the partnership cannot, we will do so as an authority, because the strangest thing about this part of the plan is I'm deeply concerned about unpicking the partnership's plan, rightly so, and yet these measures are ours. A good chunk of them are about the rights of way network and the work that we undertake as an authority. So you can do that either within or without the partnership, frankly. But I think Sabina does want us to make a request to go back to the partnership and say, can you review these measures?
But that doesn't remove us having to then commit to do the work, because I think the points Sabina's made are quite valid. So has that clarified it for people? Thank you. So we're happy to adopt the plan. Show of hands, please. Anyone against? No. Thank you. So that also, the next one is, we therefore accept the 2051, God, that's a long time away, vision and long-term ambitions for 2026 to 2031 and the future partnership plans. Everyone happy with that? Show of hands again, please. Yeah, got it. Thank you. Wonderful. Big milestone that. Thank you all very, very much. And thank you to Celia for holding us all together on this, to Peter and to all the team.
Yeah, thank you, Jim. In a less formal meeting, I would suggest that we crack open the champagne right now. But given it's a public meeting, we're on camera, I won't do that. But I will formally thank everybody that has been involved in this. This is a massive piece of work. And I said at the beginning that I think it's a really good piece of work with really clear outcomes and objectives. And the people that there's been a lot of people involved, and I won't name everybody, but Veronica and Steve and Hannah and Rob, Rob's still there, and Celia behind us have put in a huge amount of work and have kept their sanity. Which I think, given the number of variations, oh, you're there, Rob, sorry, given the number of variations and amendments and changes, keeping your head while others have lost theirs, perhaps, I think is quite an achievement. So, and I know I've been challenging at times, and I appreciate you're receiving that in good nature. So I think another round of applause for everybody involved, if I may.
Well said, Peter. Thank you all very much. Shall we have a break and try and be back about 10 to 12 if we try to finish by 1? I think we... Okay. Yes. Yeah. Because we don't want to think about the statutory management and partnership. Yeah. But the thing is, what's the penalty if we don't do it? Exactly. It's reputational. Yeah. Yeah. Oh. Yeah. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, I'll send an email to you.
Yeah.
Yes.
We all need to do it. It's just
and day rate. What do you pay for lunch ahead? Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
a notice on our website at least 4 months in advance. From start to finish, the new system aims to have plans adopted in 30 months, so that's 2.5 years. And as set out in the report, we're part of the first wave of authorities across England preparing a local plan under the new system. This includes Cumberland and Westmoreland and Furness councils, which I believe will be the first time that all of Cumbria's local plans are being prepared at the same time, which I think will be helpful. We're also one of 3 national park authorities alongside Dartmoor and North York Moors. Being part of this first wave of authorities includes receipt of grant funding from government to support preparation of the plan, and this funding is contingent on publishing the timetable and notice to commence as set out in the recommendations. Members will continue to be involved in shaping the local plan along with local communities and partners as we move through the process. And I'm happy to take any questions that you may have now.
Mark,
it's great that the local plans are going, and it'll be for 10 to 15 years, I believe. So it's quite a significant investment in time. When do you anticipate we'd have like a call for sites type exercise?
Quite soon. I think that makes sense to open up a call for sites in the next few months alongside what we have to do next, which is a scoping consultation to begin to gather people's thoughts on what should be in the local plan before we officially start. But I'm also of the opinion that it probably makes sense to have that call for sites open for a longer period of time, not necessarily squeezing it into sort of 6 weeks or something, because as we go on through the various phases, it's useful to be able to engage with people on what may be available and what we need to assess.
That's interesting, thanks.
Could you just expand, Phil, on what a call for sites is for us, please?
Certainly. So the call for sites is really us putting out a message to anyone and everyone about what land they think should be brought forward to essentially meet the needs of the plan. So it could be for housing, could be for employment, could be for retail or any other type of use. And then what we do is assess that according to the criteria set out by government on what should be in the local plan and what we may think would be consistent with our policies. So it's very much an opportunity for people to say what they think about what should be developed or what land may be available for it to be developed. It doesn't mean that by doing that we are saying that it's appropriate. We have to assess that as part of the next phase, but it is an open question for people.
Thank you, helpful. So I've got Will and then I've got Matt.
Yeah, thank you. I'm just wondering how this overlaps with the councils, because of course the Lake District includes both Cumberland and Westmoreland and Furness, and the new mayoral authority is only going to add more complexity. So I just wondered, where does this sit and how are we going to work with partners?
Yeah, thank you. Certainly complexity is at the heart of local planning, which is, I think, why some people are questioning whether 30 months is realistic. But we are all starting at the same time, as I said, Cumberland and Westmoreland and Furness and ourselves, all local planning authorities across Cumbria. So in reality, I think this is probably more helpful to do it that way rather than us having to wait for what other authorities may be doing and for us to try and connect at different time frames. It will also mean, I suppose, potentially something for members to be aware of, particularly councillors representing people in Cumbria, that will likely be going out for consultation at very similar stages, if not at the same time. And so that could cause some confusion as to which authority is responsible for what issue within different areas. But ultimately, the boundaries by which we're preparing plans won't overlap. We will be our local planning authority areas. So for Westmoreland and Furness, for ourselves, Lake District National Park, and for Cumberland, whilst we need to talk and communicate with each other about how our proposals are linking together, we will be responsible for our areas only. The point about the mayoral combined authority is a good one. With the new system being introduced, there is also an additional tier of plan making being introduced called a strategic spatial
Spatial.
Spatial,
yeah, you can tell I'm still learning in the new system. If anyone remembers the old regional plans, I think they'll look something like those. But ultimately, that will be for the Mayor of Cumbria, the Cumbria Combined Authority, to prepare, produce, and that will be Cumbria-wide, and it will obviously connect with the powers that the Combined Authority has. Naturally, we don't have that plan in place, and we won't have that plan in place whilst we are all producing our local plans. So at some point during the next 2.5 years, 3 years, no doubt that plan will start to be prepared, and so we will need to connect in with the Combined Authority on that, but it will all need to be consistent with each other. So in other words, the complexity has to be helped by communicating with each other throughout the process.
Yes, sorry, one more quick question. We noticed that a lot of South Lakeland really benefits from the civil infrastructure levy, and I don't know whether that's something which is being considered or something that can be implemented.
Thanks. I think it's something that we will need to consider. Infrastructure levy, I think there's some slight changes to it, but it still remains in place, and obviously Westmoreland and Furness Cumberland will also be looking at that in terms of whether it expands across the wider areas and not just South Lakeland.
Yeah, thanks. My question is in relation to the sort of the agenda for stimulating kind of economic growth. Really, is that I know it's been an issue with previous local plans, is that has been a disconnect a little bit between some of the commercial consents that have been granted and the actual delivery of those. Again, it goes back to Will's question to a certain extent, that we obviously have the 2 local authorities and a bit of a vacuum really in terms of where the mayor will sit eventually in terms of economic growth, at least. Can you give us a feel for how we're going to approach that as part of this local plan? Because it seems pretty clear through some of our other conversations in committees and working groups that the economic vibrancy of communities is really key. So it's not just delivering affordable housing, it's also delivering, economic opportunity and jobs and all that sort of thing. I know it's, again, difficult to deliver purely through a local plan, through planning frameworks, but what are we thinking of in terms of what didn't work in the past and how we can improve that, given the limited access to levers at this stage?
So it's an excellent question, Matt, but could I ask we pause for breath, because what we're doing now is we're getting into the detail and the nuts and bolts, which actually I suspect we could consume ourselves a half a day. The specific item was around the timetable. So I think, Phil, I'd ask you the question slightly differently. The members clearly have a lot of interest and very active interest in the creation of the local plan. When are we going to have the opportunity in the process, and particularly here part of the process, for members to engage, go into this sort of level of detail?
Yeah, certainly much informal conversation coming through strategy meetings, through local plan member working group, which we need to establish and get up and running, coming back to authority committee, as well as the kind of formal scoping consultation that we need to undertake in the next few months. So this is very much the beginning of the process, or even before the beginning of the process. We need to be having these conversations throughout. I think we're going to get into a bit deeper into these conversations at the Glaramara event as well. So it's really trying to use our time together to raise all of these important points. And I think, as you say, Matt, the level of complexity and conflict sometimes with some of the policies will inevitably come out.
So apologies to get across the debate and what I think everyone will find quite an exciting, interesting subject, but Peter's just concluded one piece of work and now he's got another clearly very exciting piece of work. And I think anyone who's particularly interested, the early strategy meetings, Glaramara, are in the diary. But if members don't mind, would you indulge me? Are you happy with the timetable and that commitment to engagement? And could we bring a halt to the discussion now? Yeah.
come back on that. In that case, can I just reframe my question? Can we build into this time frame, a bit like with Mark's question around a call for sites, that engagement piece, not just internally with us as an authority, but in terms of our partners, but also the businesses? I think it's a really important thing that we get this right alongside the housing provision. The platform for economic growth and opportunity is really key. Thanks.
Yeah. So, and I think just helping us all with visibility of that would be helpful, so members can make sure it's in the diary. Because okay. So on that basis, could I move us on and bring us back to the recommendations, which are we approve the publication of the local plan timetable as we're required to do. We're happy with that, and we support the publication of the notice of intent to commence plan making. Those are the two big decisions. Thank you all very much. Good. Now, having
pick on that, I think the penny's dropped on me that this is an externally focused and necessary exercise, but I think maybe what Matt and others are looking for is an internal timetable of what meetings it will be considered at where, and I'm sure we can commit to producing that and circulating it, Jim.
That's excellent. So I just noted to myself to ask you for that after the meeting, Gavin. So I think members need to have a list of dates so that, because they won't necessarily have strategy in their diary, but they may want to attend strategy because this is going to be part of the meeting. So that'd be a very useful action to capture, please, Helen. Right, now we're on to historic environment strategy. Eleanor, welcome.
Thank you, Chair. Hello, everybody. As you all know, the Lake District's historic environment is an integral part of the special qualities of the Lake District National Park and the attributes of outstanding universal value of the World Heritage Site. The historic environment strategy sets out our ambition for the historic environment. It aligns with the partnership plan and directs the work of our team for the next 5 years. We'll be delivering actions that contribute to us fulfilling our ambition and delivering the business plan and partnership plan. A draft of the strategy has been seen by members at the strategy meeting in April. We didn't make any changes following that. So I am hopeful that you can adopt the strategy today. I'm happy to answer questions.
Yes, thank you. Any questions for Eleanor? Tiffany?
Yes, the point you've just made, Ellen, about we didn't make any changes to the previous draft, I think is a testament to the quality and coherence of the plan. It certainly just come before us for, I would have thought, instant approval. The one thing I thought was quite interesting, though, is since then the historic environment strategy, the strategy produced by Historic England has come out, and it's quite encouraging that this plan aligns with their main policy principles. Yeah, thank you, and thank you very much.
Excuse my naivety, but how do buildings get registered?
Buildings on the listed buildings, they are put forward and can be put forward by anybody through Historic England, and Historic England will take on the information that they're given and make a recommendation whether it should be listed or not to the Secretary of State.
Thank you. Has been mentioned. Sorry, Mark.
It's a quick question, Alan. It's an excellent plan. I fully support the ambition, particularly the increasing the understanding and the appreciation of the historic environment, because that's the way you get it looked after. Do you feel you have the resources to deliver?
Sat right next to Pete, Eleanor, as well.
I think everybody would always say in this position that we would love more resources. I'm really fortunate that we've had our graduate historic environment assistant post confirmed for a further 3 years. And I think that's really positive and will enable us to deliver a lot more than we have been able to in the past. So yeah, I'm pleased with that.
Very tactfully answered. Well done. Tiffany.
Just a footnote to that, I'd also say that as a team, you're very skilled at raising funds. I've always been very impressed at the amount of external grant funding you get to carry out the work. That's a good question.
Thank you all very much. Everyone happy that as per the recommendation, we agree the 2026 to 2031 Historic Environment Strategy? Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. We're really motoring through these long-term plans, Gavin. Plenty for you to be doing. Excellent. Thank you, Alana. Right, next we move into Windermere Villas Conservation Area, and I know we've covered a lot of ground, a lot of business. So, sorry, Phil. Okay, thank you very much. So expression of interest there from Phil. Can I just remind us all, because we've covered a lot of ground this morning, that we did have public representation on this earlier in the meeting, so do please keep minded to that. Rob, am I handing over to yourself first of all?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Hello, members. This report brings forward the proposed designation of the Windermere Villas area as a conservation area, alongside the supporting appraisal and the management plan. The proposal focuses on the eastern shore of Windermere, an area characterised by the distinctive concentration of historic villas and the designed landscape. These villas were designed to respond to and integrate with the Lake District landscape, and together they form a coherent and highly recognisable character area. This is evidenced in Annex 2 of the papers. So the appraisal itself identifies that a high density of nationally and internationally significant listed buildings within a significant designated designed landscape, a wider group of unlisted but important associated features such as lodges, houses, boathouses, and a landscape that contributes directly to the outstanding universal value of the World Heritage Site. The process to get to where we are today is a result of a multi-year piece of work. In broad terms, the process has followed the standard and expected stages, beginning with evidence gathering and appraisal development, so detailed heritage, landscape and character assessment, identification of significance, condition and pressures. Draft appraisal and boundary definition followed next. Then we sought approval from committee in August 2025, where members considered the draft appraisal and approved the boundary for consultation. Public consultation then took place, an engagement with local residents, stakeholders and the consultees. The feedback was captured in the consultation statement that is found in Appendix 4. We then brought back those documents to November 2025 Park Strategy and Vision Committee for review and refinement, and to ask to go out to consultation again on a revised boundary. So amendments were made in that document as a result of the feedback we'd received. Principal changes were made to the boundary so it wasn't a single continuous area. Some areas were removed because of the feedback we received, and the review of the special interest of the whole area helped us to understand the contribution that these areas made. It resulted in the removal of the Windermere Marina Villa, the glebe and land along Windy Hall Road. Interestingly, some residents of Windy Hill Road objected to these changes and still do, and wish for the properties to be included. Excuse me. Belle Isle was also included at this stage, having not been in the original boundary. This was due to feedback received by several consultees, alongside a review of its architectural and historic interest. On Belle Isle itself, our members rightly asked the question at August Park Strategy and Vision Committee when considering the proposals for consultation if it was a conscious decision not to include Belle Isle within the original boundary for public consultation. Officers responded yes, it had been, because they recognised that there was no risk to Belle Isle given its Grade 1 listed status, and that the island is owned by the owner of the house. That reason still remains in respect of the Grade 1 listed building and also the Grade 2 star registered park and garden status. But the rationale for change in the approach from the initial advice is due to the public consultation feedback. Belle Isle's inclusion in the revised boundary is therefore not based on vulnerability, but whether the architectural and historic interest is special, that this special interest is experienced through the character or appearance, and that conserving or enhancing the character or appearance is desirable. In respect of Mr. Tung's question, in his statement from the public participation, what will this designation preserve or enhance on Belle Isle? That's not already protected. We have reflected further and believe that the conservation area would give further protection to the trees on Belle Isle, sorry. A supporting appraisal has been undertaken on the justification for the inclusion of Belle Isle within the conservation area, and that's found in Appendix 6. In respect of the fragmented boundary, this was a concern of officers when we first brought the designation to you for consultation, because if we were including a continuous boundary in that original draft, it would have to include Belle Isle would have meant going over the water body of Windermere. Advice has been sought from Historic England on a non-continuous boundary and fragmented boundaries. They've advised that these can be standard practice in conservation area designation, even if they are not common. They can allow for precision in the definition of special interest, and we're advised that there's no reason to avoid them if that's where the assessment of character and appearance takes you. Targeted consultation on the revised boundary can be found in Annex 5. This took place following the feedback received. Further amendments are now proposed to the boundary of the conservation area. However, the only change is the removal of Cockshot Wood Cottage. So it's a very minor change to the boundary definition. While the detailed consultation findings are set out in the appendices, there was key themes that were typically reflected throughout this process. They are the recognition of the special character and setting of the area, the concerns about development pressure, incremental change and loss of historic fabric, and the need to balance heritage protection with the area's role as a living, economically active place. As outlined under item 8, the public participation of this authority meeting, there remains an objection to the inclusion of Belle Isle. But like I've just mentioned, Cockshot Wood Cottage has been removed from the proposed boundary. In summary, officers believe that the proposed boundary includes areas that make a positive contribution to the special interest of the proposed conservation area, and it excludes areas where the contribution is less clear or consistent. The designation will provide a clear framework for managing change. It will help to protect key buildings, landscapes, views, including the trees. It will support long-term sustainability and distinctiveness of the area, and it will reinforce the authority's statutory purposes to conserve and enhance the historic environment. It also contributes to the wider sustainability and place-shaping objectives supporting tourism, cultural value and community identity over the longer term. In summary, members are being asked to consider the recommendations. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rob. Very succinct summary of a great deal of work that's gone on and quite a journey. Thank you. Right, opening up for questions, acknowledging that several members have conflicts of interest here. Anyone got any? Will?
Yeah, just for transparency, I'll say I'm also the chair of Windermere Lake Admin Committee. So we deal with all the encroachments onto the lake in this piece. I don't know whether that is significant.
Can I just clarify, you just wanting that registering as a personal interest that you're a member of, that you're the chair of the Lakes Admin Committee?
I think so. I think I'm still okay to speak on the matter.
Yes, with regards to that interest, yes.
I think in regards to that, I think it's good that the marina and the ferry has not been included, because I don't think that is so relevant. But I do wonder, does the east of the lake, the Clay Fuel Station and the history of Beatrix Potter, has that got sufficient protections on it? Should we be looking? It's probably not part of this today, but should we be looking at that separately?
Good. I think I think it's a good question, Will. I think the danger is we're going to get constant scope creep. We could I ask that we focus on the conclusion of this piece of work? I think if members have other areas of the Lake District they feel it would be appropriate, they should probably raise those separately, and we'll do a separate piece of work. Otherwise, we could find ourselves forever increasing our scope. But I think it's a really valid question for the area you mentioned and other areas, and the learning from this, where I think the public feedback I've taken is that we're a little bit late to the party in terms of applying the conservation area, or as put bluntly a couple of times, doing me 20 years too late. So, you know, it's really good if you spot other areas, shout out. But Will, sorry, I would rather keep the debate on the scope of what we've got at the moment. Is that all right?
Yeah, I support what is proposed. I will not vote on this just purely because I have an interest with the lake and with Belial.
Absolutely, understand.
So I was unclear when you read out the letters at the beginning of the meeting. The objection seems to be based on the fact that the conservation area doesn't need to encompass that area. There's nothing gained by it. But is there anything lost by it? And what we just heard again suggested that including it doesn't gain us much, but doesn't lose us much either. So I'm a little bit confused as to why it is a controversial, such a sort of quite aggressive objection to it.
So I don't think the applicant outlined why they objected in any of the correspondence we've seen. I'll look at Julie for that, but I don't think we saw the rationale other than the one you've made, which is it's already protected. I think, Rob, it might be worth you just repeating the additional protections. I think you mentioned it, but unfortunately Julie coughed at just that moment, so I didn't quite hear the rationale. So maybe just repeat the rationale for why we would continue to include it from an officer perspective.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, it's primarily in relation to the protection of trees within the conservation area.
Which I do believe, Mark, where the applicant recognised that protection wasn't there when in their statement as well. Tiffany.
Yeah. Sorry, could you put your microphone on?
When you read out the second piece, and the quote from the planning consultant's report, couldn't see that there was a conservation benefit, but just an administrative burden. I think the point about trees is a good one. It's really interesting, actually, that Belial has got so many protections on it already. You might suppose exactly as that it doesn't need more, but actually the trees on the island and its setting, I would have thought very important, and I could see the logic, therefore, of extending the conservation area to give it that protection. And whilst I fully respect the concerns of the owner of Belial, I wouldn't have thought that's going to be too arduous a designation, and actually just enables people to have a conversation about if there are problems with trees, about what needs to be done. It's not necessarily saying you must immediately not do things. But I think being in a conservation area, I think is a very constructive thing to be, particularly when you're such an important building.
And I do remember that the protection of trees, Rose, correct me if I'm wrong, but was always part of the discussion we were having about the importance of the conservation areas, preserving the trees as well in the other areas, not just Belial, wasn't it? It was part of the rationale for the wider conservation area.
Because I think this is something that actually things that have come up on the planning committee in recent years. The trees and the landscaping around the lake, we recognise to be increasingly important.
Andrew, did you want to commit?
Yeah, I'll just come back really quickly on that. So yes, you're right. The conservation area designation does bring additional protection to trees. So it essentially gives the same protection as a tree preservation order would to any tree which has a stem diameter of over 75 millimetres, and it puts a process in place. That being said, whether the conservation area is there or not, we always have the ability to serve a tree preservation order The tests are different. So the test for a conservation area is, as Rosa set out in the report, that you're looking to determine which parts of the authority's area are areas of special architectural or historic interest, the character or appearance of which it is desirable to preserve or enhance. That is the conservation area test. The tree protection order test is different. You would serve a tree preservation order where it is expedient in the interests of public amenity. They may overlap,
yeah,
but they are distinct legal tests. If that's helpful.
Yes, thank you. Jenny, you wanted to come in?
Yeah, can I just ask for clarification on grade 1 and grade 2 listed buildings? Does that mean that they have to have something in place that if something's wearing out, they have to replace it, or is it just left up to the owner?
Yeah, it's an interesting one, that, because there's actually there is no duty on owners to look after listed buildings, but if as an authority we think that a listed building is falling into disrepair to such an extent that its significance as a designated heritage asset is under threat, we can then act through different powers in terms of notices and enforcement and encouragement to keep those buildings in good condition.
So if it was in a conservation area, would that alter? Would that mean that they have to do the work, sort of thing?
No, it doesn't alter the kind of the provisions of the listed building, but it would, if there's a site that's falling into disrepair that would affect the character and special interest of the conservation area, then that gives kind of extra weight to us maybe trying to address it.
Sorry, I think that would be important actually, because they're not necessarily always going to be the owners, are they? Yeah.
So I've got Sabina and then I've got Suzanne. Oh, Phil, did...
Thank you. I was just trying to get the decision-making framework straight. Looking at Andrew, I'm really going to garble this, but it seems to me that a lot of the time when we make decisions affecting private property and planning rights of way and that kind of thing, there is a balancing element to the decision. We were balancing the interests of the owners against the interest, you know, that we are trying to pursue, the policy interest. It doesn't seem to apply here, is that right? Because it's an area and the framework isn't designed to deal with individual owners. I'm going to shut up now before I get it wrong. But I guess where I'm going is, you know, are we allowed to, should we, or is it irrelevant to some way balance the benefit that we think we're going to obtain by including Belle against the disbenefit that the owner claims, or is that just by the by?
Okay, so let's start with the test for the conservation area first, and then I'll come back to how it then plays out in decision making, if that's all right. So I'll keep bringing you back to it, but the test for designated a conservation area is it part of the, is it an area within the authority's area of special architectural or historic interest, the character or appearance of which it is desirable to preserve or enhance. And the view as set out in the report is that the conservation area as proposed, all of that area displays that character or appearance or historic interest, well, special architectural or historic interest, the character or appearance of which it is desirable to preserve or enhance. And that includes Belle Isle for the reasons set out in Annex 6 of Rose's report. You've heard this morning before I came into the meeting the representations from the owners of Belle Isle and on their behalf, which give the reasons why they do not believe it is necessary and appropriate. So they have given reasons for that. But for us, in terms of designating the conservation area, that test is, you know, is it an area of special architectural or historic interest, the character or appearance of which it's desirable to preserve or enhance? It doesn't bring any additional controls per se in terms of what does or does not need planning permission, what does or does not need listed building consent, largely speaking. There's some additional controls on demolition, but broadly speaking, if it needs planning permission now, it'll still need planning permission. It goes through the same decision-making framework. What it gives me at the decision-making end and the development management team and the case planners at the decision-making end is it gives us sort of two things really. It gives us a legal duty. So we've got to pay special attention to the desirability of preserving or enhancing the special architectural or historic interest, character appearance of that area. So we've got a legal duty then to pay special attention to that. So that's going to be weightier in the planning decision, that preserve or enhance. And the other thing that it gives me is it gives me a lot of evidence and understanding in that conservation area appraisal. It gives us a very clear starting point for understanding the significance, the heritage values that make that area important. So it's giving us two things. It's giving us a duty in decision making, and it's giving us a really robust evidence base as a starting point for that. Has that answered the?
It wasn't the question I asked, but it was very helpful. The question, and let me answer my own question, which is, I think you're saying balancing the interests of individual landowners who happen to find themselves in the conservation area is irrelevant for our decision.
The legal test for a conservation area is set out as in section 69.
Yeah. Suzanne, you wanted to go?
Yeah, thank you. Just a point of clarification for me, please. Beyond the normal planning regulations that we have about change of use, if I was the owner of a property and that property then became part of a conservation area, would that have tighter restrictions if I wanted to change the use of that property in the future?
On a change of use, it's on decision making. Everything comes back to understanding the significance of the heritage asset, and then the impact of the development that you're proposing on that significance. It is not impossible that changing the use of a building within the conservation area could have some impact on the heritage significance of that building and the heritage significance of the conservation area if the use that it is currently in intrinsically connects with the heritage values and the significance. So it may do.
Right. So by including this property in a conservation area at some point in the future with different owners, they may have more difficulty if they wanted to change the use of it.
I could not rule that out.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Jackie?
Can I just ask, why are the owners so opposed to it?
We don't know.
We don't know, because you'd think it give them more protection, not less.
Yeah, so we didn't expand on that.
Only to say that the reasons are set out in the public participation sections that they've submitted, and they're the reasons that they've given.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm conscious we've given it a good airing. Any other burning questions before we move to this? So this is another one with a vote, please, with several. I know we're going to have several abstentions, and then we'll record those as well. The first recommendation, with a slight typo, it's recommended that members designate Windermere Villas conservation area. All those in favour? Any again? Any?
12 in favour.
Any against? Abstentions? 3.
3 abstentions.
So similarly, similarly for the next, we recommend and adopt the conservation appraisal management plan and minor amendments to the Director of Standard Development. All those in favour? So same mix. Thank you very much. Very helpful. Right, now we move under section 100A of the Local Government Act 1972. The public be excluded from the meeting for the following items. This is because exempt information as defined in Schedule 12A of the Act may be disclosed during the discussions. So we're going to talk about commercial stuff, basically. So we just pause for a moment while Helen does that.